Here's the human condition as far as I can tell. It's you versus the world, right? Sometimes the world gives you what you want, but most of the time it doesn't. So each of us has moments of peace and happiness, but in between those moments are long periods of just waiting for the next thing. Life becomes tinged with a little bit of insecurity and disconnectedness, doesn't it? For many people who've reached this point, it's really natural to ask, is there another way? And speaking from personal experience, I can say that, yeah, there is. My name's Ray, and I have a background both in science. I studied computer science at Stanford and worked on AI at Google, but also in the contemplative life. I've been meditating for close to a decade. I have had all of these existential questions my entire life, and they have been most satisfyingly resolved in the philosophical framework known as non-duality. I would love to share that system with you in this video. We'll talk about what non-duality is, how we can practice it, and what benefits it will bring to our life in the form of peace, joy, creativity, connectedness, and that's just naming a few. So, let's get started. So let me be clear about one thing. Non-duality is not a belief system. It doesn't ask you to abandon any of your existing beliefs. What it is a philosophical framework that's found at the core of myriad spiritual and philosophical traditions throughout history. It doesn't ask you to take on new beliefs so much as shift your perspective to enable a new way of being in the world. It's a practice. And at the center of non-duality is the claim that what makes us suffer is being mistaken about who and what we really are. It's actually a path of discovering who we really are and letting go of our mistaken and limited identities. To that end, what we're going to explore most in this video is the topic of non-dual awareness, which is central to non-duality and something we can actually put into practice right now. So we'll start with the second word in that phrase, awareness. So if you're at all familiar with meditation, you've probably been given meditation advice like be present or be here now. But when you think about that for a second, it's actually impossible not to be here now, right? Unless you're some kind of time traveler. It's only when we interact with the world through our thinking and through our head that we can only ever imagine being somewhere other than here and now. However, when we zoom out from the kind of tunnel vision of living in our minds and our thinking, we encounter a world of sensation, of space, and presence. And that's awareness. Awareness is simply the present experience. While the contents of experience can change, sometimes you're listening to a car alarm go off, sometimes you're tasting tea, awareness remains at the base of all of those experiences. So fundamentally, this is a practice of shifting our base of existing from a mental, thinking-based one to a present, embodied, sensory, awareness-based mode of existence. So let's take a couple of seconds to get out of our head and into the present awareness. I want you to take a deep breath, and as you breathe in, just notice how your belly expands in order to take in the air. As you breathe out, notice how your belly contracts to let out the air. You can do that a couple more times. What we're doing is deliberately paying attention to sense experience and not to our conceptual experience, which helps us tap into awareness. Once you've kind of settled in the breath, you can expand your awareness to include various body sensations, maybe your feet on the floor, the feeling of heaviness in whatever you're sitting in, if you're sitting. And you can expand even further to include all of the space in whatever room you're in, all of the sights you're experiencing, all of the sounds. Literally include all of your present experience, because all of it is arising in awareness. If you practice this a little bit, you'll find that you can consistently return to the spaciousness and the peace of awareness as a refuge amidst the busyness of everyday life. So now that we've explored awareness in the term non-dual awareness, let's explore the first term, non-dual. Duality means separated into two. And so to say that two things are non-dual is to say that on some level, they're not actually as separate as they may appear. So for the purposes of this video, the main separation that we're concerned with is the subject-object duality, or separation. Fundamentally, when you move about the world, you perceive yourself as the subject and everything outside yourself as the object that you're perceiving. Nothing wrong with that. But the problem is, we come to over-identify with this sense of self as subject. And it might not be as real as we think it is. When we look at our direct experience, we find all sorts of things, tables and chairs and sights and sounds, but we don't actually find a tangible self. All we find is a series of stories that we are telling. Now, there's nothing wrong with telling stories, but when the stories we tell about ourselves are limiting, and they inherently are, because stories can't capture the totality of life, then we become confused and limited about who our self really is. So the non-dual path is one of starting to drop our identification with the various stories that we're telling about ourselves. Enable a little bit of openness and not knowing that allows new actions to emerge. So as we move from a sense of self as limited and separate from the world to one which is more spontaneous, we find that what we really are is much more surprising and mysterious than we could have ever put into words. The non-dual path is not one of just becoming nobody. It's a path of letting go of who you thought you were and discovering who you really are. So let me share my personal experience. Before I began any kind of meditation, I was a very cerebral, self-conscious overthinker. And after a couple of years of kind of dualistic mindfulness meditation, it was extremely helpful at getting me back in my body, helping me be more calm and grounded. But I reached a kind of inflection point. Dualistic frameworks can help you improve your sense of self, but what the non-dual approach does is just help you get over yourself entirely. And for those willing to take that leap, it's incredibly rewarding. What I found after a couple of years of non-dual practice is that all sorts of new and surprising qualities emerged. I found a font of completely unself-conscious creativity within myself. There was a newfound sense of authenticity and naturalness in all situations, and more peace and relaxation in whatever the present moment offered, whether good or bad. There was a more open and flexible approach to life because it was no longer limited by who I thought I was and the kinds of things I thought I had to do. And finally, and this is the most important to me, there arose a really deep desire to help and be of service to others. Because one of the main non-dual findings is that we are not as separate from the rest of the world as we think. We are much more entangled and interconnected. And when you find that you're free to do what you want, what you naturally want to do is help. So let me give you a couple of tips if you're really interested in setting out on the non-dual path, and I feel it's extremely worth it. First off, this is not a path of having sort of peak experiences and building towards something in the future. I can't overemphasize that enough. This is a path of becoming deeply at peace with the present moment, whatever the present moment is. And so therefore, there is no over there to the path. There is only this present moment, this which is the perfect time to practice. You come to find, after you've practiced for a bit, that every moment, no matter good or bad, is absolutely unique and precious in its own way, because you're not evaluating it as good or bad in the same way you were before. It's also, and I really like this part, not a path of doing more. It's actually a path of doing less, because all of this self-centered rumination is actually a drain on your energy. And when you can learn to do less and less of it, you find you are more freed up to do other, more embodied and present things. So to recap, the non-dual path is one of becoming so fully present in this moment that you begin to dissolve everything that's keeping you feeling separate from everything in this moment. You begin to dissolve the sense of separate selfhood, and you discover a much vaster and more mysterious sense of self. Now, if you're serious about the non-dual path, the good news and bad news is that there are infinite teachings, teachers, and techniques that you can engage in. I know, because I did far too many of them. What I would recommend, instead of just hoarding teachings, is just picking one or two good ones and really sticking with them. I would be happy to help assist you on your journey. I write about non-duality for free on Substack. That's thelabyrinth.substack.com. There's a link in bio. You can go to the Labyrinth and subscribe completely free. And in your welcome email, you're welcome to respond to me, letting me know where you are on the path, what you're interested in learning more about, because you can go in infinite directions. I'd love to be of assistance on this journey. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the comment box below. And thank you so much for watching. I wish you nothing but the best of luck on your path.